Be the best at what you do, whatever that is, and ensure that there is nobody on the floor that can do a certain thing better than you.
I don't want to react. I want to respond. And so you need to give yourself that space between reaction and response so that it is a more thoughtful response.
We should celebrate intelligent mistakes. For me, the failure is if you don't try anything. You're not trying to be better today than what you were yesterday.
What sport teaches you is every time you fall, I think you get back up again.
Don't get so caught up on where you're going that you forget where you are.
There's always guilt that you're not spending time with your child. You have to be ruthless, you have to be clinical about it, and you decide what is your priority at that point in time.
Welcome to the Zinnov podcast. You're listening to our Business Resilience series, where we bring to you conversations between eminent industry stalwarts and thought leaders from across the globe as they discuss their insights on overcoming challenges and the mindset that help them navigate the journey of crisis, resilience, and growth.
You know, they say that numbers never lie. Well, in finance, they tell some pretty incredible stories. But here's what I'm really curious about. Who are the women behind these numbers? The ones turning spreadsheets into success stories. Hi everyone, I'm Nitika Goel, CMO of Zinnov, and welcome to Woman in the Mirror. Today's episode, it's special. We're sitting down with some amazing women who are absolutely crushing it in the BFSI world. Now, this isn't going to be your typical here's how I made it story. Trust me, we're diving into some real stuff. The moments that tested their limit and the wisdom they earned the hard way. And yes, even the times they thought about giving up but didn't. But let's be honest, that's where the real goal is, right? Today, I have three powerhouses joining me. Veda Persad, Country Executive at Northern Trust India. Mamatha Madireddy, Managing Director and Head of HSBC Global Services Centers in India, and Sirisha Voruganti, Managing Director and CEO at Lloyds Technology Center, India. They've turned roadblocks into stepping stones, pushed through the tough days, and built some pretty extraordinary things along the way. And the best part? They're here to share it all with us. The good, the bad, and everything in between. So let's grab our coffee or tea, get comfortable, and talk about what it takes to lead with heart in an industry that is obsessed with numbers. You know what I love about great stories? A protagonist who battles the odds. My first guest, Veda, is someone who knows how to navigate uncharted waters. 30 years, 3 countries, and 9 different roles at Northern Trust later. She's now the country executive for India. But here's what makes her story special. It started with a family that believed that work ethic trumps everything else. Growing up in Canada with immigrant parents from the West Indies, Veda learned early on that your potential isn't defined by where you come from, but really where you're determined to go.
So first of all, I was the first in my family born in Canada. So I am Canadian born and raised. And it was very different back in the 70s and 80s and 90s in Canada for, I won't even say women, but for people of color. Very different environment then. But I grew up with a strong work ethic from my parents, which I think has resonated and stuck with me through my entire career. Like you said, I've been in this industry specifically for about 33 years now. I started in 1991, and next month I'll be celebrating 20 years with Northern Trust. But my entire journey has been in the custody space, the custody and financial services space. So whether that's operations, client service, sales, marketing. I moved over to the manufacturing side for a little bit. So I worked for a mutual fund company in Canada for a while. And then since joining Northern Trust, I've had the honor of being in 9 different roles in 3 different countries. I came to India 9 years ago. I was asked at that point to take a role here. Seeing where the Indian macro environment was at that point, looking and understanding how the talent was evolving and developing in India and how I saw that as this surge that was coming forward, I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of. So that was 9 years ago. My journey has been amazing since then, and it's been exciting, crazy, chaotic. But through that chaos comes opportunity, and it's just been an amazing journey so far.
Veda's journey is a testament to the power of resilience and adaptability in the face of change. It shows us how embracing challenges, whether it's navigating cultural barriers or stepping into new roles across countries, can lead to extraordinary growth. My next guest, Mamatha, brings a different yet equally powerful perspective on leadership. With over 27 years of experience in the BFSI sector, including 23 years at HSBC alone, Mamatha has not only led with vision, but has also championed diversity, mentorship, and sustainability at every step. Let's dive into Mamatha's story and uncover the lessons that have shaped her incredible journey.
So my career is around 27 years, largely, I would probably say 95% with banking. But majority of my career actually has been with HSBC. I joined HSBC GCC way back in September 2001. So 23 years with the organization. And I joined as an assistant manager, and we were about 450 people when I joined the organization. One happy small family, right? Everybody knew everybody. From there, I think where we are today, almost close to 8,000 in the HSBC GCC in India. And I think I take immense pride for the fact that I've been part of the journey to where the organization started to where we are now. And I think my journey has been a journey of ups and downs, right? To be honest, there have been great successes. There have been some great failures as well. And I choose the word great very carefully because I also strongly believe in that we should celebrate intelligent mistakes. The only thing is don't repeat the mistake, but you've tried, you made the mistake, you celebrate it, you learn from it, and you move on quickly. So that's been my journey. And I think I've also been very fortunate to be able to do a lot of different roles in the organization. Some came my way, some I aspired for, some I was very nervous to take up, but I still took up certain roles. So I think that really helped me reach where I am today. A lot of learning, like I said, on the process, a lot of experimentation, as well as in the process to be able to just have the courage to do something different, to do something kind of new, trust in myself, trust in the ecosystem around me, knowing that even if I fail, I'll be able to pick myself up and move on. So that's really been my professional side. And given the role that I do now, Nitika, I also have a great opportunity to be able to contribute into the industry, into the community. So I sit on the board of certain NGOs. Like you said, I've just taken on the role of the NASSCOM GCC chair as well. And I view that as a tremendous opportunity to be able to just give back to the industry and be in a position to be able to influence and do the right things for the industry and the community at large. Personally, married, have a 17-year-old son. It's that stage as well where the mom is having to really look at what is he studying, his kind of scores, and all of that. So life's been busy. I think life's been good, but this just, I think, has been a very humbling journey. And I'm hoping that the future kind of remains the same as well.
Mamatha's journey epitomizes purposeful leadership, one that goes beyond business goals to focus on creating impact. From mentoring women leaders to giving back to the very ecosystem she has learned from, Mamatha shows us how leadership can be a force to reckon with for both progress and empowerment. As the saying goes, success is sweeter when shared. My final guest, Sirisha, is a trailblazer at the intersection of technology and finance. Over the past decade, she's transformed legacy systems, leveraged the power of data, and collaborated with fintechs to drive innovation in the BFSI sector. Sirisha's journey is a testament to the impact of a wholehearted commitment, never halfway, always exceptional.
Yeah, it's a little funny in terms of how I ended up with the financial services industry. Was doing this presentation. So I used to lead in innovation in the Mahindra world. As I was just happening to present to two gentlemen from MasterCard, and they're very impressed with what we had. And that's how my first job happened, where I moved from tech into the fintech world. But I do realize they are fairly connected at many levels, right? So the last 10 years have been pretty much in the banking and financial services, really looking at architecture, data, digitizing a lot of stuff that we had. And another thing which I feel very passionate about is the fintechs, right? So really looking at not inventing everything in your organization, but being open to certain solutions that some of these third parties are building out, and see if we can work together and jointly create amazing experiences. And the best part, I think, of being in India is the fact that it's the second largest in terms of investment that's coming into the fintech sector, right? And so that's been a big part of the portfolios that I have and run as well. So overall, it's just been an interesting last 10 years. And I think, to me, it's all about tech, and it's all about deep tech, even in the banking and financial services space.
Sirisha shows us that leadership is about showing up, staying curious, embracing challenges, and believing that every step forward can lead to something extraordinary. Now let's get real. What does it take to sit at a table when the world assumes you don't belong there? For Veda, it meant leaning into her strength and authenticity, using the unconscious bias that she faced as an opportunity to connect with others on her own terms. For Sirisha, it was pushing back against the dismissive label of a diversity candidate, proving that decades of hard work and merit, not her gender, earned her a seat at the table. Let's hear from Veda and Sirisha as they open up about what it's like to carry these perceptions, flip the script, and lead with confidence.
Sometimes I get asked a lot, what is it like to be a woman who's ascended to this level? And I have to admit, I don't think of myself as a woman first. I think of myself as a leader first. And I think I'm a very strong, to your point, strong, energetic, passionate leader that just happens to be a woman. And I think when we go back and I'm talking about the work ethic and the ethics in which I was raised, I think that comes a lot from how I was brought up. My parents were immigrants to Canada from the West Indies. We grew up, it was just 3 girls, so there was never gender bias at home because we were all women, young girls growing into strong women. So we were never held to a certain standard of this was for boys and this was for girls. And I think because that was stamped in me from young, it carried through. So I never actually saw myself as a woman in this position. I was just a person in this position. Now, how did I use that to my advantage? In Canada, especially 20, 30 years ago, one, I'm petite. I like to say I'm 5'2", but that's with the help of heels. So I'm tiny, a person of color. And what that does is with other people, it can, because as you said, unconscious bias, lead people to have a certain perspective of what I am and what I am not capable of. And sometimes that catches people off guard because then I can get close enough for people to have their guard down. They don't feel like they have to have their defenses up with me. And I can get close enough to individuals to really get to know them. And I think that's something that I've used to my strength.
I've had a few people tell me that. They've said, oh, she's a diversity candidate. That's why she has this job or she has that role. It's extremely demeaning, I think, to one's entire career when somebody says that, because you've got your role after 30 plus years in the industry and you've gotten it purely based on your merit and what you bring to the table, and it's not your gender. Maybe, I don't know, in the very beginning, we might want to keep some seats in for bringing in a certain amount of gender diversity across into organizations. But I think as you go up, I don't believe you're just getting your seat because of your gender. There are many of us who have a few of these seats have worked really hard to get to that point. And I think there is really no other shortcut to success. Be the best at what you do, whatever that is, and ensure that there is nobody on the floor that can do a certain thing better than you.
Veda and Sirisha shared how women can challenge the stereotype that success is just a diversity win by staying authentic, proving their merit, and breaking through the bias with resilience and determination. So, how do you cut through the noise of criticism and conflicting advice to stay focused? Mamatha believes in insulating herself, listening only to those who she trusts and who genuinely had her back. Sirisha builds on this with a reminder that resilience, perseverance, and staying in the race are essential for long-term success.
The way I deal with is a filtering process. There is a lot, right? You get to roles, there are so many conversations that happen around, and I think the more senior you get, the more seen you are in the industry and all that, you will know conversations are bound to happen. I think insulating oneself to comments or just body language or anything that disturbs you becomes very important. What we need to do is really identify, acknowledge, accept, and work on things from people that you trust and you know have a genuine interest at heart. Right? Otherwise, it just becomes too confusing. There's too many contradictory things that come up as well. There's only so much time you have. So I think we just have to ensure that whatever we are following, that people who matter to you are the ones who you really need to be listening to.
A few. One is that it's level playing ground. So you always have to understand that after a point, it doesn't matter what gender you are or whatever you are. You have to compete at the same level, get into certain positions. The second thing is the race is not over till the very end. So you need to ensure you're running the race. And resilience and perseverance is extremely important, especially in careers. And you have to keep at it. And the third is take help when you're getting it. Because again, it is impossible to try and be a 10 on 10 on everything. For instance, and women particularly, I think, go through this, right? You would have a very important meeting and that's the day your child is sick, or that's the day there's a PTM in school and you can't make it. And the ecosystem around you always guilt trips you for some of those things that you can't do. Because during the earlier years of your career, you do require that little extra help. And I've had the good fortune of a few people really helping me with that. But I think the one thing you have to keep telling yourself is it's okay that you are a 6 on 10 on something. And your kids always excuse you for a few of these lapses if you talk them through it, right? And focus on what is most important for you at that point in time, whatever that is, so that you are mentally satisfied and the next day you can come back into whatever else that you want to do.
Mamatha and Sirisha both share practical strategies to navigate challenges and keep moving forward, both with clarity and confidence. But resilience, as you know, isn't just about work. It's about finding balance. For women, It's the roles of a mother, a wife, and leaders, and especially when they all collide. As Sheryl Sandberg famously quoted, "You can have it all. You just can't have it all at once." For Mamatha, it came down to what she calls ruthless prioritization, being clear about what truly matters.
Yeah, and there's always guilt, right? There's always guilt that you're not spending time with your child. The phrase that I always use, Nitika, is ruthless prioritization, right? It is your priorities. You have to be ruthless. You have to be clinical about it. And you decide what is your priority at that point in time. What are your priorities at that point? I, for one, never miss PTMs, any school event, come what may. For me, that is priority. That I'm very clear with my boss. I still remember, I think he was 5 or 6 years old. He was doing his first stage performance, right? The first thing he came on stage with the crown almost falling into his eyes, he was looking for us. And then when we waved at him, you should just see the pleasure. These are small things, but so important. Because it's not that you can do everything all the time. And I think you use the word fatigue as well. Fatigue definitely sets in. So how do you prioritize? And there are times when you say, it's okay, I'm happy to do what I'm doing. I probably do this for the next 12 months because my priority is, or let's just say, my child or elderly care or whatever, right? It takes time, it takes effort to build that ecosystem around you. When I got married almost 20 years back, right, day one, I was very clear with my mother-in-law that these are the timings we work. I come into office at 10, we leave almost by 8. There are certain festivals I have to work, but there are certain festivals I know I will take off and do that puja at home. Right? It's just setting that clear expectations. So, and that's where I really see some of the women struggling is when I hear their conversations in the washroom and all of that. It's just, how do they balance it out?
You know what I love about Mamatha's take? It's refreshingly real. Mastering when to say yes, when to say no, and building that circle of support that keeps you going at home and at work. But here's where it gets interesting. Veda shows us that at work, prioritization isn't just about managing your to-do list. It's about creating the space where people aren't afraid to say, I might need help. That sweet spot between giving your team wings to fly and being there when the winds get rough.
This goes back to my kids. When my kids were little, I would say to my kids, look, I don't care what it is that you've done. Just please come and tell me first. Please don't let me find out from somebody else. And whatever it is, we can work on it together and we can get it done. And the same thing applies to my work life. If there's something that's gone wrong, if there's a mistake that's happened, if there's a mistake that you think is going to happen, come and talk to me first. Come and let me know, and then I can help. As opposed to, and I'm not going to say covering up, because some people want to try, and I get it, they want to solve their own problems, and I absolutely get it. And sometimes it works out perfectly well for them, absolutely. But if it doesn't, and they've gone down a wrong path, and now I'm coming in to clean up a little bit, had I known where you were going, I could have perhaps steered you a little bit differently, not gotten involved, not taken over, but steered you a little bit differently. And it's okay. Because even if it's just an early warning sign, to me, that's all part of honesty, being open, honest, early. And that to me is a non-negotiable.
There's another reality that affects many women leaders, a reality we don't often hear about: menopause. The physical and emotional challenges it brings can be isolating, especially in high-pressure environments. Sirisha opens up about managing demanding leadership roles while navigating these physical changes, reminding women leaders that they're not alone in this journey and that their strength lies in showing up every single day, even when the going gets tough.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us in our mid-40s do go through this, right? Where you have these hot flushes and you're sitting in a conversation in a meeting room and there's something important happening and you don't know what's happening with you because you suddenly start sweating or you just need to want to go out and get a breath of fresh air before you can come back in. And some of these, I think, are also not what you want to talk too much about because, again, as I said, there are not too many of these seats around the table, and sometimes you wonder if you call something out, what that's going to do to your career, right? So you go through much of that just by yourself. But yes, that is something that does happen. But in some organizations today, you have a lot of these coaches as part of the employee well-being, and I think there is somebody that you can go and talk to about what's happening to yourself and actually get some help. I've not taken that personally, but we do support that in our organization. But yes, that does happen where it's a little more difficult to go through stress as you reach a certain age. And yeah, I think that could be a bit detrimental if physically you're not strong enough. But I think it's important for us to stay really fit and exercise and ensure that mentally and physically we're a little strong to take on these roles.
Sirisha's honesty is one of the most powerful things. In a world obsessed with leadership strategies, she opened up about something many women face in silence. Leading at the top is challenging enough, but now add your body having its own agenda in the middle of a crucial meeting. But as Sirisha reminds us, real strength isn't about being invincible. It's about showing up, staying resilient, and taking care of yourself along the way. Renowned psychiatrist Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response." Leadership is about how you respond, not just how you react. And the brief pause between a trigger and your response is where the real work happens. Veda takes us inside that moment, sharing how she's learned to harness it, using honesty, self-awareness, and a deliberate pause to turn emotional triggers into thoughtful, measured action. Let's hear how she does it.
Now, as much as sometimes I might be screaming inside and my head might be ready to explode, and I think sometimes people can see that on my face, I will very purposely walk away and calm myself down. Even when it comes to emails, because we know that sometimes in emails, you can just get completely triggered in an email. I will write the email. I will not put any addresses in the 2 lines just in case something horrific happens. I do not address it to anybody, except maybe myself. So I will not address it, and I will write it out, and then I will walk away, and then I will come back again. And usually what was started off as a paragraph, it goes one of 2 ways. Usually it's either a paragraph where I've ranted that I toned down, or I went off with one very terse sentence that I was like, ooh, I got to soften that up. But I allow myself, I think at this point in my career and this point in my life, I've figured out that I don't want to react. I want to respond. And so you need to give yourself that space between reaction and response so that it is a more thoughtful response. I'm not going to say non-emotional because I think we tend to sometimes connect feminine characteristics with emotional. And I do still think having emotion is important because it shows that you care. So I think being able to give yourself that time to get that right temperature of response is one of the things that I do.
I'm sure, just like me, many of you have had your childhood passions take a backseat. but you'd be surprised how much of your passion outside of work can shape the way you lead. For Sirisha, badminton and dance weren't just hobbies. They were a part of her identity. And while she may not compete anymore, she finds her way back to the court or stage whenever she needs to focus or recharge. For Mamatha, dance taught her storytelling, discipline, and how to think on her feet. Let's hear how these childhood passions continue to shape their leadership journeys even today.
What sport teaches you is every time you fall, I think you get back up again and are preparing yourself for the next match. Yeah, I think maybe because of sport, you learn to handle pressure as you're growing up. And badminton, I used to play at the state level and the national level for many years. So I do resort to doing something else if I'm so stressed. It's always good to hit a shuttle, and that works magic for me, right? Just seeing a court and being on court. And been a dancer as well. I've given a number of performances. Kuchipudi is what I had learned, and for many years, for about 17 years, and I used to be performing in many parts of the country. So yeah, that's the form of dance.
I think dance taught me that, right? I started learning dance when I was 6.
Wow.
You just have to be so organized, focus, concentration, and then sometimes you have to think on your feet. So I think for me, because it became part of my DNA, dance starting at the age of 6, is just that planning and focus and all, almost to the point of being boring sometimes, I think is SBA for me. And dance also teaches you storytelling, right? Because through the dance form, you are telling a story, right? And then you gauge audience, what are the vibes you're getting back from the audience, and do you need to do something more, something less, thinking on your feet on the stages. I think it's just your reflexes also maybe improve.
You know what's fascinating about great leaders? They draw inspiration from the most unexpected places. For Sirisha and Mamatha, it was their childhood passions. Who knew that dance and sports would shape how they lead today? But it got me thinking, what really sets exceptional leaders apart? Maybe it's not just about what they achieve, but how they grew along the way. I love how each of our guests brings something unique to this conversation. Veda's learnt about turning self-doubt into strength through reflection. Sirisha's mastered the art of storytelling to move people into action. And Mamatha, she's all about making smart mistakes and learning from them while keeping her eye on what really matters. Let's hear what they have to say about this.
Doubt now, when it comes into play in my head, it's more, I almost take it through a logical checklist because I have the experience now. Now, back then, it would just eat away at my brain. I'll be honest. It would just eat away at me, and I would be reliving the moment over and over again. I've almost learned to really let go of it now. Okay, fine. I fell down, but I hit a home run 99 times before this. And I just have to remind myself of that. So I think if I was to say to someone who's earlier in their career and having those periods of doubt, is remind yourself every day of something that you did to move yourself forward. Because we tend to focus on the negative things. We tend to focus on the things where we fell down. And so if you can get into the habit, just like if it's taking a multivitamin in the morning or drinking a cup of green tea in the evening, a good habit is to reflect on one thing that I did today that moved me forward and made me a better version of myself.
Yeah, so I think one of the most important traits or aspects of leadership is the ability to communicate or the ability to tell a story, because communication becomes really important at some point in time. You can't say, I'm technically very sound, but I am unable to communicate. And that already stunts growth of individuals, because I think you have to be able to stand up for your team. You have to be able to speak for your team. You have to be able to negotiate through a lot of things on your jobs. So I think it's extremely important to over-index on communication, whether it is oral communication or written communication. One of the things that I've seen working very well, and we've done that for various cohorts of both men and women, is we do put them through a session on storytelling where we formally teach people how to talk, which I think is very important.
And I just draw from my experience, Nitika, when I talk to budding women leaders, and just few things. And I'd love to keep it very, very simple. It is probably the MS Dhoni, Rohit Sharma style. One, like stakeholder mapping becomes important. Make the effort to list your stakeholders. Make the effort to establish at what frequency do you want to talk to them. And I always tell them to celebrate intelligent mistakes. And the third, ask questions. Knock on the door, ask. It is okay. The answer you will get is a no, or the answer you will get probably isn't something that you don't like. But it's like you say, right? It's no regrets.
Life's biggest lessons rarely come with a neat bow, do they? The same goes for leadership. It's all about asking the right questions and learning as you go. You know what's fun though? Getting leaders to drop the corporate speak and just get real. So we played a little game with our guests, a rapid fire round that got them thinking about everything from their younger selves to their coffee habits. What would they tell their 20-year-old selves? And who makes them laugh no matter what? Since this is a woman in the mirror, if you had to look at yourself in the mirror and tell your 20-year-old self something, what would it be?
Be patient and love yourself. Be your own best friend.
Celebrate intelligent mistakes more. Ask more questions.
You're the best.
Love it. If you had to look in the mirror and tell yourself something today, what would it be?
Continue to be grateful and appreciate everything that you have every day.
I probably say, Nitika, is carve out more me time.
Aspire to be the best.
And assuming it was not a mirror but a looking glass and you had to tell yourself something 10 years or 20 years ahead, what would that be?
Celebrate all of the amazing work that you have and the foundation that you've built over the last 60 years.
I think I will just say first continue to remain fit and be relevant. Right? Even my conversations today with my son, I feel, are not relevant because that generation talks a completely different language. And I'll go, what are you trying to say? And he'll give up, right?
Nothing comes easy. Still love to keep going.
Who or what always manages to make you laugh, no matter what?
My husband.
Oh, that's nice. Is there someone that has deeply inspired you? What about them stands out to you?
So at work, there are lots of fresh blood in organizations, right? The Gen Zs, and we have a lot of them in ours. It's always very nice to walk around the floor and listen to some of what they have to say. They're either thinking out of the box constantly or thinking of an easier way to do something. That always gives me a lot of positive energy. But my go-to person in my life has always been my mom. She's probably the go-to person for me, and I don't know how she manages it. She's my source of inner strength, and she's at 83. If she manages her life the way she does, I think I can definitely do that.
You'd probably say Mahendra Singh Dhoni. How does his mind work? You can see that trick going in his mind, that is processing happening. How does he maintain that calm? But I think also I have been very fortunate, Nitika, to have two very strong women in my life. One's my mom, who's a doctor, and second is my dance teacher, who is from the civil services. She's a breast cancer conqueror. She's a Padma Shri. So those are my kind of life coaches.
That's lovely.
What is the worst piece of advice you have ever received?
Veda, you're too assertive. You need to dial it back. And I didn't pay attention to it because it is who I am. And I am going to lean forward. And so I'm glad that I did.
Not bad. And what is the best piece of advice you've received?
There's two. One is don't get so caught up on where you're going that you forget where you are. And the other one I have in as a signature in my email, which is sell your strengths and buy your weaknesses.
What is the best label that has been attributed to you?
That I'm an understanding leader. I think that is something, because I over-index on people a lot, and I genuinely believe that organizations are about people. You never succeed if you're just an individual. I think I always believe organizations are team efforts, and it's the team that really succeeds. So when there is somebody that comes and calls that out, personally, I take a lot of pride in that.
What's the one book that has left a lasting impression on you?
I think one I would talk about is probably a book I read in 1999. It's a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, and it is just a story of perseverance. But I think the most important thing is grooming that next seagulls to be able to think beyond what a seagull can do. So it's always been inspirational.
You know what strikes me the most after today's conversations? Leadership isn't about following a mapped out path. Just look at Veda, Mamatha, and Sirisha. They didn't just climb the corporate ladder, they built their own. Just raw authenticity and the courage to keep going, even when things got tough. To every listener who's ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or unsure, this episode is your reminder. Your journey is valid. Your challenges are your strength, and your potential is limitless. As we close this chapter of Woman in a Mirror, remember, your potential isn't defined by the roles you're given, but the stories you choose to write. So until next time, I'm your host, Nitika Goel. Keep showing up, keep standing tall, and never ever let anyone dim your light.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Business Resilience Series. Stay tuned for more such interesting episodes. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. To know more about Zinnov, visit our website, www.zinnov.com, or drop us a note at info@zinnov.com. Follow us on Twitter @Zinnov for regular updates on our content. Thank you again for listening to the Business Resilience Series of the Zinnov Podcast.